Daytona International Speedway in January, and that means it's time for the racing season to get started. And it's an IMSA tradition that the sports car season starts with the roar before the 24. Let's get 2021 going. This is round one of the IMSA Prototype Challenge. The Scouts of America 145 at the roar before the 24 here at Daytona International Speedway. Hello everyone, I'm Dave Burns along with Brian Till. Daytona Beach is located about an hour northeast of Orlando, Florida. Brian, take us through this legendary track's road course.
Daytona starts the racing season around the world, it seems like. A 3.56 mile roll, as it's called. But it is challenging. Don't just look at it on a piece of paper and think that there's not a lot of elevation or challenge to this racetrack. There is a ton. Great passing zones as well. And these LMP3-based IMSA Prototype Challenge machines should have a great go at it today. Brand new cars for this season.
Taking a look at the weather, early morning drizzle, showers have cleared. But as you can see, the cloud cover is still here, and there's a slight chance of rain all day long. You see the powerful 2021 Lexus IS350F Sport leading this field on its reconnaissance laps before they go green here. And you mentioned the speed of these race cars, Brian. The names on the left, the starting grid for the IMSA Prototype Challenge Series here at Daytona, ones that the average casual fan may not recognize. What type of driver do we find in this series?
Well, you find all kinds. Maurice Krantz, who's there on the pole in the Mueller Motorsports number 21, shares that car with Lawrence Hare. And these are two European drivers, and bronze and silver rated drivers only allowed in the Prototype Challenge category. Krantz, one of the best bronze drivers in the world, and he showed it by qualifying on the pole. It's his debut in this class at this racetrack in IMSA competition. But outside him, Keith Grant, he shares that car with his brother David, showing that he too can throw some world-class lap times down, and it's a pretty stout front row. Two different manufacturers you'll also see today, Ligier, the Ligier chassis, and then the Duquin chassis. And so those will be the two chassis, all powered by the same 5.6 liter Nissan-based power plant in the back.
Through the bus stop chicane, you can see that the pace vehicle, the light on top of it is off, so the team is going to double up now and come to the green flag. One of the other changes for this season, the 6-race series for the IMSA Prototype Challenge, is that all of the races will be 1 hour 45 minutes long. You see that up at the top of the screen. Down below on our ticker, you'll see the name of the organization that the car is campaigning under, and of course we'll keep you apprised of which drivers are behind the wheel. But for now, Maurice Krantz, he takes the number 21 car and waiting for the green flag.
It's a slow start, Dave. He brings them down really slow. Duquin's on the front row. Both of those cars up front are the Duquin chassis, and then Ligier's filled the second row. And what we saw last year was the Duquin, which was the Norma chassis last year, seemed to take a little longer to get up to speed. We'll see if that's the case with the new aerodynamics that we have this year. Here we charge down into turn one. Krantz is going to lose the position, or will he? Bold move there by Grant around the outside in that bright yellow number 40, but he can't hold it. And Krantz maintains the lead off of turn two.
And the 2021 racing season is underway at the World Center of Racing, Daytona International Speedway.
Good stuff here, good battles, and really pretty bold. Qualifying was wet this morning. And so this is the first look today at a dry racetrack. The number one, Naveen Rao, defending champion, he and Matt Bell a little bit further down the field right now than they would like. Back in 10th is where Rao qualified, their number one. But you saw Keith Grant with that bold move around the outside. He just couldn't hold it, Dave. And I think perhaps these Michelin tires need just a little bit more pressure, a little bit more temperature if you want to run that high line into turn one. Perhaps he can get it done at the end of the second or third lap, but not so much at the start. But Krantz isn't going to give him the opportunity, I don't think.
Very evenly matched cars. You see Krantz pulling out to quite a bit of a lead there. Keith Grant right behind him, and then Dan Goldberg in that blue and red number 6. Closing in now in a heavy braking zone. Doesn't have a chance to do it here. He'll fall in behind and hope for it on the banking.
I think what you really got to do as a driver, you had a wet qualifying session, so as the driver, the qualifying driver starts the car, this is your first look at the racetrack in the dry today. You need to see if the changes that the crew has made, your engineer has suggested if they're going to work. And the racetrack's going to change throughout this hour and 40+ minute race. So it's one of those deals where you just need to get settled in. I think some of the young drivers, you were asking me about who drives in this class. You've got older, experienced drivers who don't make their living doing it, young drivers on their way up. So it is a broad dichotomy of different drivers in here. But for those young drivers, they need to understand this is not a 35-minute sprint race. And you've got a teammate that you need to hand a car over to. So
in one piece.
Preferably in one piece. So a lot of learning for the drivers and some of the teams as well. That's the great thing about this series. It is a ladder series, a stepping stone series, not only for the drivers, but for the teams as well.
Well, and the coolness, Brian. This is a prototype that will reach speeds of 180 miles per hour in the straight line. And a lot of you sports fans may not know, at one time I had aspirations of being behind the wheel, and Brian Till was my instructor in Skip Barber Racing School. Which is very interesting. We'll get back to that in a moment because there's been a little bit of contact on the track.
So Naveen Rao in the #1, Alan Brynjolfsson in the bright yellow #7 to the outside. Now it's interesting, take a look here as they come off the international hairpin, that contact that's made, Brynjolfsson on the outside. Every driver I've spoken to talks about the visibility or the lack thereof out of this new iteration of the LMP3 car. For safety reasons, the head restraint on the left side of the driver's head goes all the way to the dashboard now, and every driver I've spoken to said left side visibility is a big, big problem. And I wonder if in that situation for Naveen Rao, he simply lost sight of Alan Brynjolfsson out there to his left and slightly back a little bit, just didn't know he was there and tracked on all the way out. Or you can play devil's advocate and say he knew he was there and he drove him off. But no, I'm going to go with he couldn't see.
I wanted to, as we take a quick look here at Tristan Herbert in the 18 car today, paired with Jared Andretti, I want to get back to how you ruined my driving career. But this would have been something that if I had continued on, Brian, eventually there might have been an opportunity if I was good enough, if I was brave enough to race in a prototype. So for some of these drivers, this is their ultimate coolness. This is what they've been aspiring to, and now they're getting to do it at Daytona. Absolutely, just like the 43 right there. And Joe Robillard, a great job. Joe shares that car with Stephen McAleer, and McAleer, a former winner in this class. You used to be able to run it just by yourself if you were a silver driver. You can't do that anymore. But Joe Robillard's 57, Stephen McAleer in his 30s. He doesn't really want me to say just how old he is, but so for Joe Robillard, Joe does this for fun. Stephen does it as a career. So there is that driver pairing like you were talking about, which makes up a lot of this field. And for Joe Robillard, he says, hey guys, when he goes home on Monday, I raced my prototype at Daytona International Speedway this weekend and went 180 miles an hour, and we finished here or whatever, and that's pretty cool for the guys at the country club, especially when you show them the picture. You can see the full course caution has come out, the Michelin ticker on the top of the screen there indicating yellow. We'll find out the reason for that. You know, Robillard's car, oh, and there it is right there. That's Ari Balog off in the 33. I wonder if that is there damage to the front splitter, it looks like? Not sure how that would have happened, but it looked like the front splitter may have been slightly askew. You're watching the IMSA Prototype Challenge. Clock at the top, you see 1:36 remaining in this race, which is 1 hour 45 minutes scheduled. Brian mentioned earlier, qualifying took place in damp conditions, and the race is under cloudy skies. And you talked about the temperature of the tires, Brian, 60 degrees ambient temperature here, a cool day in Daytona. Yeah, it is cool, and the other thing is it's Florida, so it's humid. You know, so it's one of those deals where we got this cool, moist air. It's going to take a couple of laps. And remember, this racetrack might be 3.56 miles long, and you've got the banking and this, that, and the other. But what temperature you gain on the infield, you lose when you get on the banking in those long straight line runs. So it takes several laps to get temperature in these Michelin tires, and we're back at it. What does Grant have for Grant's down at turn 1 this time? Is he going to try to go around the outside? No, he's not. A little further back. Whoa! There we go. Battle for 5th and a spin. Oh, and contact, big time contact. Oh,
when we were...
Joe Robillard got into him just as he was spun around, and 3 or 4 cars involved now.
Yeah, we were just talking about Joe Robillard and Stephen McAleer hopefully having a good day. I think that one has come to an end with the 47 in the back and one of the Junior 3 entries, the number 3 involved as well. It was the 34 that had the initial spin.
Peter Ludwig.
And Robillard actually up in the air. He can't get those Michelins on the ground because the 47 Motorsport entry there behind him has actually picked the rear tires up off the ground.
Ludwig gets it straightened around. Let's see how that happened. Down on the inside, Brian. Oh, he wanted to go. Yeah. The car in front was not.
He jumped back in the throttle, made contact, and when he made that contact, he had to lift. And as soon as he lifted, that transfers weight to the front, gives the front end good grip. The rear end comes around because you're already compromised. You're in the corner already. And now you're sitting in the mouth of the funnel and everybody else is coming in. Take a look.
Tristan Herbert just gets a little wiggly in the green, black, and white car. And when Ludwig wanted to jump back in the gas, there was no place to go.
Yeah, and like I said, with the car bound up in cornering load, when he came off the throttle, that transferred weight to the front, dug that right front end even more, and the rear end began to step out. And Joe Robillard, not his day. We saw that smoke. I think that was just simple bottoming.
You're watching the IMSA Prototype Challenge.
This is going to be an interesting restart because Maurice Krantz in the 21, Keith Grant in the 40, they have experience in these cars, in this class, in this type of racing. So does Naveen Rao right behind him. He is the defending champion along with Matt Bell in this class, but the third car in line, Tristan Herbert, a good race car driver, and certainly knows the sport. We'll talk more about that in a minute, but he doesn't know these cars, and you see Rao trying to take advantage around the outside.
Tried to make that black and green and white 18 a little bit wide. That's going to be just enough to keep Rao behind for the moment.
That's impressive right there on the part of Tristan Herbert. This Andretti Autosport team just got this car,
look out.
and that.
And Naveen Rao takes the one too far into the International Horseshoe and takes out both himself and Herbert.
And that was not impressive. We were just talking about what was. Well, now we can talk about what isn't. Now it's going to be difficult to get these cars back underway. And had a good look at both sides of the cars since they've been spinning around in circles there. They don't seem to have a lot of damage on them. But I wonder if Naveen Rao's experience allowed him to go a little deeper in the brake zone, but the opportunity just isn't there. Herbert's already turned in to enter the corner, and Rao has way too much speed. I don't think if Herbert was there, Rao was going to make the corner anyway.
No. And he wasn't certainly crowding the apex by any means, the 18 car, so plenty of room to race there, but Rao just took it too far. That'll be a local caution. Both cars got back underway. Caution lifted there, and the field continues under green with Krantz out ahead.
Be interesting to see what Todd Snyder, who's the race director, and his group of driver advisors have to say in race control about that, and see if there will be a penalty on Rao for avoidable contact. Tell you what, this is going to move the 54 up, I believe. I think Josh Sarze was able to get through that mess, and he should be up to third, I think, as you watch a good battle here. 74 on driver's left. Jason Rabe, who had problems in qualifying in the wet, got into the wall in turn 1. That 47 Motorsports team got it back together and have gotten him back on track. The car looks to be in good shape, in the 81 just in front.
That's Mel Johnson, the black car,
who has no experience in these cars either. So 2 rookies in this class. Mel Johnson, LB Cup champion in Lamborghini Super Trofeo from 2019. This is a completely different package that he's used to driving. The Lamborghini Super Trofeo car certainly is a rocket ship in a straight line, but it has anti-lock brakes in addition to traction control. So he doesn't have the anti-lock brakes here, but he does have the TC, and another good battle just a little bit further forward.
Yeah, that was for 6th. This is for 4th. Thomas in the 11, the blue and black car, and Ludwig, who had the spin that started the big melee, coming back through.
And Ludwig able to work his way back through. Thomas, the 2020 IPC bronze champion.
Holding tough on the outside, Brian.
This is going to be interesting here. This is two Duquesne chassis, so they both have the same aerodynamic signature. The question is, how much downforce are you running on that rear wing? It's really the only thing you want to mess with here. And what that's going to do is going to affect not only the straight line speed, it's going to affect your braking capability, but the other thing that it can do is if you try to trim too much out, it can increase some tire degradation on the rear tires because you don't have that downforce in the back anymore. And later in the stint, that tire degradation could certainly affect your braking down into the heavy braking zones, like into turn 1 in the bus stop.
And I don't know if I'm going a wrong direction here, but remember how quickly the 34 rear end came around in that melee, so not a lot of downforce?
Well, it could be, but I think that's a situation of really colder tires because that was early on. You've got to look at a Duquesne chassis in the hands of the 46 there, and right behind the Ligier, so Jason Ray, or I'm sorry,
Steve Scullin's in the green and white car there.
And the Scullin's in the green and white car, that's right. He's in the Duquesne, and then right behind him, the 3 of Greg Palmer, the 2 different manufacturers. You can tell by looking at the nose, the Duquesne has that narrow nose, and the Ligier is slightly more rounded in the center section. But the other thing that you can tell is when you watch him go by, the Duquesne is, I call it a single gill. Right behind the front wheel, you'll see a single gill. It's a double gill aerodynamic opening there on the Ligier chassis. Other than that, from afar, they look really, really close. You see the Ligier also has the 2 down posts that go down to the front splitter, a little bit easier to see there on the white number 3, just behind the 46, the green and white Duquesne of Scullin.
Real quickly, we saw Naveen Rao going through pit lane for a drive-through penalty for that move in the International Horseshoe. And too many men over the wall working on the 7 of Brynjolfsson, so he will do a drive-through penalty as well. But we saw that very aggressive move by Rao, the champion from last year, Brian, going into the International Horseshoe on Tristan Herbert, and IMSA was not pleased with that.
I didn't think they would be. I've known Todd for a long time, and he and I were going through the rule book the other day and really kind of trying to get into his mind as to what he sees and wants to see as a race director. I'm a race director in another series, and I have my opinions, my thoughts, and the things that I want to see in the way I call a race. We all do it just slightly differently, but I thought Todd and I might see that one kind of the same. So turns out we did.
3 car now with trouble. No power or something coming out of turn 2.
And that's not where you really want to stop it because the cars track out there. There'll be a yellow in turn 1 notifying the drivers there's been an issue there, but for the 3, that's just kind of a dead stick. It reminds me of what we saw with the 6.
We'll be back with more IMSA Prototype Challenge from Daytona. Welcome back to the action.
Look at this.
Trying to make up ground that was lost. Tristan Herbert on the outside, the left-hand car, the 18, trying before they get to turn 1 to get by Scullin. He's not going to be able to do it. Scullin's going to hold him off. What about the exit of the turn?
Problem is that left front. I mean, he's closed down on him. Problem is you can't attack in the brake zone the way you want to with that flat spot on the left front. You got to be really, really cautious. You get in a place like this and you lock the left front, it's going to slide up and in. But you can see how gingerly he's handling that car there in the brake zone, knowing just a little more pressure, I can puff that left front. It's going to create a problem. He works his way past Scullin. Good job by Herbert.
Steve knew he was there. Gave a little bit of racing room in the International Horseshoe. And now Herbert gains one of those positions you were talking about as he gets set to hand the wheel to young Jarrett Andretti. Of course, this car fielded by Andretti Motorsport this year. Uncle Mike happy to be on board with his nephew's effort. And we'll talk more about him later in the show for sure, but a great looking race car. Taking a look at the past, Brian.
So you saw it start back in turn 1. He was really, really cautious on the brakes, and he's going to kind of probe down to the inside and look, and you can actually see him kind of on and off the brakes a little bit. If you watch the car and the way the rake of the car or how it tilts changed, Herbert was actually in there on the brakes. He got off of him a little bit. He wasn't sure if he wasn't right on the edge. It's kind of that back and forth, and he really wanted to make sure that Scullin knew he was there, and I think he did a great job. Scullin certainly kind of realized that he was there. He sensed him, and Tristan Herbert wasn't going to make a mistake again. They got through there cleanly, but you could tell he was just very, very gingerly treading into those braking zones. That's going to be the difficulty right now for Tristan Herbert, is the inability to attack. See that left front?
Our production crew is so stout. I heard the audio of barking tires, and unfortunately, that was the 47 of John Brownson going around, already 2 laps off the pace. He gets it corrected, and there's Brownson's car going the right direction, and Herbert going by him.
And, you know, it just kind of sticks in my mind. I think it's great that you're getting initiated into the IMSA Prototype Challenge stuff, because it is such a diverse series. We were talking about Steve Scullin, and you think about the drivers in this field, and you were like, well, who are they? Well, Steve Scullin is president of corporate operations for Fidelity Investments. So there's a guy with some brain power. Naveen Rao is a neuroscientist, an AI developer, a processor architect. There are some really smart people out here, and I think that's the cool thing about motorsports. It offers a challenge to these businessmen who are involved in these high intellect businesses, because they can take that cerebral approach, and that's exactly what Naveen Rao did to win the championship last year with Matt Bell. He said, this is not what I do, teach me. You know, just like he was taught getting his PhD in neuroscience. You know, it was teach me, I want to learn, I want to learn. Now, yeah, they have to be able to then take those lessons and apply them on the racetrack, and not everybody can, but many of these high-end executives, this is kind of a release for them. Some of it is what they do in their business life, and then they get to amplify it a little bit more. Amplifying things right now is Hamilton, who wants to find a way around Olsen, but look just behind them, that's the number 7. Alan Brynjolfsson with that damage to the right rear. He's out there saying, hey, you know what? It may be torn up, but we're going to get some experience, we're going to get some mileage, and we're going to get some points like we talked about.
That's right. Trent Hinman waiting on deck to take over the 7, and around goes Olsen. Hamilton will finally find his way by, but a mistake by the driver of the 86 will give them that opportunity. I wonder how much pressure was coming from behind with Bryn Olsen there, but the 86 just spinning and looping it in the International Horseshoe.
Yeah, for Bruce Hamilton, it could have been the 7 moving up on him that creates the incident, because I'm sure the spotters on the radio saying, no, you know, you got to go, 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 people are coming, and he just gets it around. And you're like, well, how does he do that? They have traction control. Well, traction control is all well and good, but like I always say, physics is physics. Traction control helps. It helps keep the wheels from spinning. That can keep the rear from moving out. That's fine, but if you carry too much speed in there and you're right on the edge, even the traction control isn't going to help you. It's just like you can't drive up to a wall at 100 miles an hour with a car with anti-lock brakes and go, but I've got anti-lock brakes. Well, yeah, you do, and they won't lock up when you hit the wall, but if you go too deep, you're going to hit the wall, because the car just can't slow down.
See some raindrops on our camera lens there in the Western Horseshoe.
Oh, that'll make it fun.
Yes, it will. And no, this series, Brian, will they run with the rain tires? I believe they will, because I think you called a whole race last year.
Absolutely.
That they were under wet conditions most of the time.
They certainly will, and that's where the traction control settings will come in handy. You see Hamilton there being passed, and there are 8 different traction control settings on the wheel that these drivers can use. Not on the Dash 2 cars, though. I just realized that. Okay. The Dash 2 cars don't have traction control, so that's why we saw that hurry there for Olsen. He's trying to get out of the way. He's trying to go, and he gets in, lights up the rear tires, and that's why he goes around. So no traction control on the dash 2. So
time for Dario Cangelowski to hop in the 47. John Brownson hopping out after that incident on track earlier. Cangelowski, the driver from Chester, New Jersey, will have his time at the wheel of the Duquesne. One of the first ones to hit pit road and start this process, Brian, just under an hour remaining in the Scouts of America 145. 34 on pit road, driver change there as well. This will be Peter Ludwig getting out. James French from Sheboygan, Wisconsin, jumping in, well-known name in sports car racing here in the States.
And very familiar with Prototype Challenge machinery, back to the open cockpit Prototype Challenge cars they ran. He actually won here, Rolex 24 in one, and Sebring as well, a champion in that category, so he understands this class. He's also the Asian Le Mans Series champion in the LMP2 category for 2020, so experience is certainly something that James French has. Brynjolfsson and Rao side by side. The damage there on the 7, that bright yellow car has to be shaking that car at high speed. You can see the body panels just moving around.
This is the car that just spun. That was Terry Olson. Bob Iverson now climbing in, the Florida resident.
We'll be back with more IMSA Prototype Challenge from Daytona.
Very strong there. The leader's just a few seconds behind him. Last car in the lead lap right now for the 60 of Kazimets, and you see 9 cars still on the lead lap. Kazimets, of course, in the P3-2, the last of those. By the way, just to put a button on the Jared Andretti story, great book out there by a friend of mine, Jade Gers, written and published this year, called Racer. It's a story of John Andretti, and if you ever want a little bit of an insight into John's life and Jared's upbringing, and also the rest of the Andretti family, picks on cousin Michael a little bit. It's a lot of fun. Look up Racer. It's a great read if you want to pick it up.
Well, and John really was kind of more like Mario and Aldo. And I mean, obviously, no disrespect to Michael Andretti, who's been spectacular in his career, but you know, he kind of stuck with what he was really, really good at in the championships, and why would you not? John was a guy who branched out: IndyCar, sports cars, stock cars, drag racing. You know, I mean, everything.
Any and every one of them.
Yeah, any and everything. Tell you what, David Grant,
nice little run,
is having a good run, but Stephen Thomas is not letting him get away. Thomas right there within a few car lengths. See what he can do.
Back
28 minutes to go.
Yep, just under 30 minutes remaining in the hour 45 race here at Daytona. Up onto NASCAR 3 and 4. Down to the start-finish line, and then heavy braking into turn number 1. We had an off recently, Brian. That's the 86 around. Bob Iverson finding that he may have a flat spot or two.
Yeah, and back to the P2 car without the traction control. And, you know, in these conditions right now, it's overcast, not a lot of sun, not a lot of temperature in the racetrack, and you just have to be really, really careful. This racetrack is interesting as well. It's changed over the years as different surfaces have been put down, but a lot of the personality stays the same, and that is there's not a lot of grip, both for power down and for cornering capability in either one of the hairpins, both the International hairpin and the West hairpin.
Stephen Thomas trying to give David Grant everything he can. Now get up out of the banking here and see what kind of a toe he can deploy. Both a good exit, though, although Grant got off the corner very well. Might have even pulled a few yards at that point.
So funny, Thomas trying to close in. We were talking about Courtney Crone a little bit earlier, and one of the sponsors on her car is Bob Stallings' dealership, one of his dealerships. And I just looked down at my phone, it kind of lit up. I have a text that says, "Hey, Brian, Bob Stallings here." I've known Courtney for 15 years. She's the real deal. Talent, guts, passion. She's a winner. Just a matter of time.
Oh, that's great. Fantastic.
Told you she has some support behind her.
Yeah, absolutely. You have a lot of good numbers in your phone, too, there, Brian. See who pops up next. Go ahead and text Brian. We open it up to you right now. You distract him from the end of this good race here. Albeit back for beyond first place, because right now Lawrence Hare is destroying the field. This, again, the battle between Stephen Thomas trying to get around David Grant, sets him up right off of 2 and 2A. Oh, he's got to give way right there.
Oh, that was close. This is heating up, and it's interesting. It seems like Thomas has the better car in the braking zones, both Duquesne chassis. So it could just be a matter of tire wear. I'm trying to look back up and see when each made their pit stop. They made it within a lap of each other. So Thomas just seems to be more aggressive and being able to attack a little bit more in the braking zones in the infield. Grant seems to get those good runs off the corner, as you were talking about. If I'm Grant, you can be as aggressive as you want to be in the infield as long as I get the run off the bus stop, because I know where the checkered flag is.
And again, you can see it there, just pulling out ever so slightly is David Grant in the yellow car, JDC car.
Well, and it does go back to engineering and setup, and think about what you want on the car here. You can trim these cars out and look for a little more straight line speed, but with a speed limiter on them, it's just a matter of getting to fast a little faster, right? Or you can put downforce in them and have a better car in the infield. But again, the checkered flag is at the end of a long straightaway. So you want that good rocket ship launch onto the super speedway here, and trying to find that balance, one that's going to be comfortable for the driver on the infield and still give you that little advantage when you leap back onto the tri-oval, is what you really want to look for. That downforce, though, gives you spectacular braking right here into turn 1.
Grant in that yellow 40, by the way, is about 9 seconds or so behind James French in third position. So a bit of a ways to go there. This is one of the closer battles on the racetrack now. And if you missed it, Stephen Thomas, the car behind, stayed in the car. He'll run both stints today. Meanwhile, Tonis Kazimet's on the right in the 60 car, closing in, looking for another spot. Would that be Al? No, that's going to be, that's her position. That's the 81. Yeah, it is.
It's Al Miller. And this is going to be interesting to watch. So right here, you've got the difference between a very experienced driver in a car with 40 less horsepower. And you saw the run off the corner that Kazimet's had, and that was sheer driving talent and experience, carrying the speed, the rolling speed through the middle of the corner. And right about here, that extra 0.6 of a liter is really helping out Miller, but Kazimet's...
He said, you know what? If you're going to do that, I'm going to race you hard.
Yeah. And I think maybe since it was right there in front of the tri-oval, there was probably a crew member standing there with a radio going, that car does not matter.
Yeah, or lift.
Yeah, or lift. Remember, it's a different class. That's the other thing.
That's
with
right.
Two classes right now, you need to know who you're racing with.
Great point. Tonis Kazimet's is through. That's for 8th position. Al Miller gives way, and he's about 5 or 6 seconds behind Scott Huffaker in 7th, next in class, that is. So, meanwhile, the leader still out front. That's Lawrence Hare, blue and white 21 for Mueller Motorsports. Putting on a show today for, I'll say, their local fans. Again, Belgian-based, but has a U.S. headquarters just down the road here from the Speedway.
This is the IMSA Prototype Challenge on NBCSN. Welcome back to the action.
Give a little hats off to Tasha Baylog, who the 21 just went past. She was there in the 33, the Junior 3 racing entry. We talked about her and her dad. Ari had problems early on. This is her first race in this type. She's overcome a lot to get here, doesn't have a lot of experience, and she saw the leaders coming. I'm sure her spotter was on the radio, but she did an awesome job, and I don't think she impacted the lap time of Hare in the 21 at all.
Just over 7 minutes remaining now. Will Hare and the Muehlner Motorsports team hold together. They have been rock solid so far from the start. Moritz Kranz, the teammate, taking the car to pole, pulling out a large lead. The pit stops, which again have a minimum time on pit road, so they're all fairly similar. It was smooth, but of course it was not a huge advantage in and out, and they've maintained that gap and even increased it. Problems now for Stephen Thomas. Slow exiting turn 6 and onto the NASCAR 1 and 2.
Now he seems to have been able to pick up the speed a little bit, but the car doesn't look at speed to me.
A little damage there on the left rear.
I don't know if he went around somewhere. The gap now is huge.
Let's take a look. Yes, he did go around, it appears.
Yeah.
But where did the flapping of the left rear begin?
Well, again, there's damage there. It looks like he's gotten into a wall somewhere, but I was going to say, again, as low as these cars run, if you go backwards down off the banking onto that apron, that sharp angle could certainly grab what we call the cheese wedge back there, the cheese wedge, and damage it.
I like that.
Well, it does. I mean, look at that.
It does look like a cheese. I've used cheese grater before to explain tire wear.
Well,
tire degradation.
And there you go.
There's the wedge itself. And we saw earlier, again, the manufacturer of the harness system or the wiring part of these taillights should be proud. They are hanging on for at least a couple of laps.
Well, and in looking at the 11, I believe he's missing a dive plane on the left front as well. It just, as I looked up and saw it, and it went kind of behind one of the graphics. Yeah, that car's been through it today. So that dive plane up on the left front will affect the downforce a little bit. The cheese wedge in the back, they're not just there as something to make it look pretty and stick a brake light or a rain light on or whatever. They too deflect and guide air. You see that there's a gap between them and the bodywork, and all of that, all of those very intricate aerodynamic pieces have an effect when the car gets to speed. They're on there once again for a reason. Every gap, the width of it, how much air it moves through. There have been a lot of people who are a lot smarter than I am sitting down with CFD analysis and working through wind tunnels and so on and so forth to come up with the best aerodynamic package. And what I'm seeing right there on the 11 is not what they had in mind.
This is a fun formula. If you missed us talking about it earlier, I'm sure you're very aware. They will be included in the Rolex 24 at Daytona, the 59th running of the race. A 5th class added, and certainly they'll be interesting for sure, Brian, because there will be a speed differential, and there may be an experience difference as well. And we've talked to a lot of drivers this week involved in the Rolex about what the traffic might be like. A 50-car field versus under 40 last year, so there'll be more cars on track. But the inclusion of this class in the Rolex 24 will present an interesting day and night.
Oh, it definitely will. Just a couple more laps for the Muehlner team. I think the biggest thing is, like I said, no one really understands where the personality of the LMP3 car is going to fit in that long distance race, the Rolex 24 next weekend. And so you look at the diverse group of drivers that will be in these LMP3 machines. Here in Prototype Challenge, it's bronze and silver only. You pointed it out. Any level of driver can run in that category. So if you think about bronze level drivers in GTD cars with pro level drivers in LMP3 cars, that's going to be interesting. What will be even more interesting is bronze level drivers in LMP3 cars and pro level drivers in GTD cars.
And there's a lot of them this year.
Yeah, so the LMP3 machine, I believe, should be slightly faster than a GTD car, but a GTD has traction control and anti-lock brakes. So you put a really good driver in a GTD car against a less experienced driver in an LMP3 car, which aerodynamically should be better and get the car through the corners faster, but doesn't have the anti-lock brakes. It does have traction control. all of a sudden you can see how the more experienced driver has a better weapon and the less experienced driver has a weapon that's a little harder to wield. So, yeah, I think it could be interesting. Starts, restarts, and any rain or any condition like that where grip is at a minimum, I think that's where you'll see the delta come into play and the different personality that an LMP3 car may have. The same car is going to have at least 3, if not 4 different personalities, because that's how many different drivers are going to be in it.
Well, for those of you listening live this weekend, the Rolex is going to be an affair to watch, especially in that last category, the GTD category. So many pro drivers who were available or who might have been removed with programs closing or changing or whatever. I mean, it is stacked in GTD. And as well, the top class DPI has changed over and added cars. It is going to be something to see the 59th running of the Rolex 24. Today, so far, it has been all about Mühlner Motorsports and the German duo who took the car to pole and have led every lap, except maybe under the change of drivers here at Daytona International Speedway. And this time, Brian heading back on to NASCAR 1 and 2. Hare will be coming around to get the white flag.
Well, he is, and his day is going to be over pretty soon. No one near him, but the battle for 4th, 5th, and 6th is getting hot. Stephen Thomas, Jared Andretti, and Huffaker right there, all closing down on one another, and they've got time left to see that order change. Right now, they're trying to get it changed right now. Huffaker in the green and white up above the 11.
Thomas is below him, coming down into turn 1, crossing the start-finish line first. Andretti's gotten by, and so Jared Andretti up to 4th. This is the battle for 5th.
Good stuff. What does Stephen Thomas have? Can he get it done? Can he close that and get that position back? Scott Huffaker pulling away.
There is your white flag for Lawrence Hare. Final lap of the race. Again, it's been an hour 45. At this point, underneath the clock, and only watching the final lap here. There's that 4th place car of Andretti with a fine drive, picking up positions, and Thomas has had to yield. He's back to 6th.
On all these drivers, you know, as I was saying, I was talking about Jared earlier, and he was saying, don't laugh at me if we don't do well. Well, a 4th place finish, I think, is pretty good. He'll still be all grumpy about it, but so many of these teams had to learn their cars when they got here, and they've had so little testing. I think they've done it. All these teams with brand new equipment have done a great job of enduring and just understanding what they've got and taking what they've been given throughout the day. And some of these teams have been given things. We saw the 34 with the problem. We saw other cars involved in an incident earlier on. Those are gifts. You take those, you say thank you very much, and you move forward. And for several of these teams, they'll end up with really good points because of their strong efforts, but because of the problems for others. And that's what motorsport is. And good battles there, like we said, we saw it between the 18, the 46, and the 11 there on the closing lap. The other thing that's great about Prototype Challenge, many of these races come down to the final lap or two because, once again, the vast majority of the time, the faster drivers are in at the end, and that's when it is definitely game on.
Fastest driver right now, Lawrence Hare. Nobody in his mirrors. Mühlner Motorsports and the blue and white 21. They will go to victory lane at Daytona and take home the first checkered flag of the IMSA 2021 season.
This is the IMSA Prototype Challenge on NBCSN.
Well, it's been a great start to the season as round 1 of the 2021 IMSA Prototype Challenge Series is in the books. The 21 car from Mühlner Motorsports America found victory lane at the World Center of Racing. Let's hear from winners Moritz Kranz and Lawrence Hare.
Obviously, it's awesome to win in Daytona. You always, as a German, you see it on TV. So racing here is just an awesome experience. And the Mühlner team just did a perfect setup on the Duquesne. And it was actually pretty nice, and we just could pull away right from the start.
To be honest, both Moritz and me already know it from the 2020 season in Europe. So we are used to it. We know the car is a very good car, reliable. Just enjoy the drive.
You gotta see how the next races go, and then keep the momentum.
Let's take a look at the unofficial results here at Daytona. Moritz Kranz and Lorenz Herr winning from the pole and dominating the race. Dakota Dickerson and Josh Arche bring home the 54 in second after starting sixth. And there's the Grant brothers finishing in third. Good run for them today. And a great run for Andretti Autosport, finishing fourth with drivers Tristan Herbert and Jared Andretti. Rounding out the top five, the 46 car from CT Motorsports with an incredible run from their 17th starting spot. In an LMP3-2, the 60 car was the class of the field Tonis Kazimets, storming all day long and finishing first in class and 7th overall. So the 52nd season of IMSA sports car racing is off and running. Next up for the IMSA Prototype Challenge Series, it'll be the 3.74-mile road course from Sebring International Raceway in March. For Brian Till and our entire broadcast team, I'm Dave Burns. I'm proud to say NBC Sports is your exclusive home for IMSA sports car racing in 2021.
This copyrighted telecast may not be reproduced, retransmitted, or used in any form without the authorized written consent of the International Motorsports Association. We would like to thank all of our loyal fans for your continued support, and we hope you enjoyed today's broadcast.